Good morning, everybody. I think we'll get started. We'll wait. Hopefully, some more of our colleagues will join us. It is February the 13th. I'm Shelley Hedelman, and welcome. We are here for the Public Safety, Transportation, and Environment Subcommittee, and we will jump right in with the Office of the Public Defender, and we have asked Mr. Scott Benson, our budget analyst, to begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Scott Benson, and today I'll be presenting the operating analysis for the Office of the Public Defender, or OPD. OPD provides counsel and related services to indigent persons through 12 district operations, 4 divisions, and 2 specialized units. The 4 divisions that support the office are General Administration, District Operations, Appellate and Inmate Services, and Involuntary Institutionalization Services. As you can see on page 1 in the operating budget summary, the fiscal 2027 budget decreases by $3.3 million, or 1.8%, to $174.3 million. It's important to note that the fiscal 2027 allowance includes 9 deficiency appropriations that provide a total of $16.3 million in general funds. $5.8 million is to adjust fiscal 26 costs, and the remaining is to cover fiscal 2025 expenditures. 4 deficiency appropriations cover these shortfalls for the following uses: $8.5 million for panel attorneys, about $644,000 for contractual transcription services, about $557,000 for software licenses such as Microsoft and eDefender, about $373,000 for medical service support, about $115,000 for information technology related contracts, and about $294,000 for various operational expenses. Excluding the $10.5 million in deficiency appropriations to cover fiscal 2025 shortfalls, the fiscal 2027 allowance increases by $7.2 million, or 4.3% compared to the fiscal 2026 working appropriation. You can see in Exhibit 1 on page 3 that 82%, or $144 million of the fiscal 2027 allowance is for district operations. In Exhibit 2 on page 4, you can see that 80% of the fiscal 2027 allowance, or $139.4 million, is for personnel-related expenses. As you can see in Exhibit 3 on page 5, the largest increases in the fiscal 2027 budget include personnel-related expenditures. Outside of personnel-related expenditures, there's a $1.2 million increase for panel attorney hourly rate adjustments. Additionally, the fiscal 2026 working appropriation does include $65,000 in general funds for an unidentified contract that OPD could not explain. As you can see in the personnel data on page 7, OPD has 104.5 vacancies as of December 31st, 2025. Job offers have been accepted for 12 of these vacant positions with a start date between January 7th and February 18th. As you can see in Exhibit 5 on page 9, OPD has handled a fairly static caseload over the most recent 5 fiscal years. Excluding cases that were handled by panel attorneys in each year between fiscal 2021 and 2025, the agency handled between 122,351 and 127,660 total cases each year, which is well below the caseloads in calendar 2019, which totaled 204,247 cases. Despite this decrease in cases since calendar 2019, OPD efficiency has not improved due to the growing complexity of cases and the time required for cases. OPD should discuss actions that are being taken to increase efficiency of managing more complex caseloads with current resources and monitor the hours spent on each case. As you can see in Exhibit 6 on page 11, OPD is understaffed for its current workload by about 1,025 attorneys, with circuit court felonies being the worst with an estimated 792 additional attorneys required to meet standards. Current workloads are unsustainable for many attorneys as the increasing complexity of cases has meant fewer but longer cases for attorneys to manage. This issue has contributed to low employee morale, high turnover, and extensive reliance on panel attorneys along with other consequences. Panel attorneys are paid by OPD to provide representation to clients when OPD attorneys are unable to do so. As you can see in Exhibit 7 on page 12, panel attorney use decreased from 12,193 cases in fiscal 2024 to 10,534 cases in fiscal 2025. OPD has received deficiency appropriations in 3 consecutive years to cover prior year shortfalls for panel attorney fees. You can see in Exhibit 8 on page 13, the fiscal 2023 actual costs were $11.4 million, but required an additional $1.8 million. In fiscal 2024, the actual costs were $12.1 million and required a $1.3 million deficiency. The deficiency to cover the shortfall for panel attorneys has grown considerably in fiscal 2025 to $8.5 million. The fiscal 2025 working appropriation contained $12.5 million for panel attorneys. However, OPD indicated that it used funds for other expenses to balance its budget. OPD should specify how the funding originally budgeted for panel attorney expenses in fiscal 2025 was used and discuss the reasons for realigning those funds to other purposes. The fiscal 2026 deficiency appropriation does not include additional funds to adjust the fiscal 2026 working appropriation for panel attorney expenses from $11.1 million, despite actual spending exceeding $12 million each year since fiscal 2023. Additionally, the fiscal 2027 allowance of $12.2 million remains lower than the fiscal 2025 actual expenditure totaling $13.3 million. The $1.2 million increase for panel attorneys in the fiscal 2027 allowance is to increase the hourly rate by $5 an hour from the current rate of $60 an hour or $75 an hour in cases with possible life sentences. OPD should discuss the reason for the lower funding in fiscal 2026 and 2027 for this purpose compared to recent actual experience, how it would cover any shortfalls in this spending, and how it would adjust hourly rates if costs of current services outpace the budgeted amounts. On page 15, you can see the recommended actions, and the Department of Legislative Services recommends increasing the budgeted turnover rate to 6.41%, adding language restricting the use of funds in the deficiency appropriation in the fiscal 2027 allowance for panel attorneys to be used only for that purpose, to add committee narrative requesting reports from OPD on panel attorney use and expenses, and to reduce the deficiency appropriation by $65,000 in general funds. Now, that concludes my presentation. I can take your questions.
Questions for Mr. Benson? Senator Lewis-Young.
I'd like to better understand the DLS recommendation for a reduction in almost $1 million, because it sounds like the caseload is increasing. They're having a very difficult time attracting more personnel to handle that caseload. So it almost seems punitive. And I did hear you say you're reallocating some funds, but could you elaborate on the rationale for that recommendation?
Certainly. So the current vacancy rate within OPD is 10.33%. OPD has had a historically high vacancy rate. I believe about 2 years ago in fiscal 2024, it was roughly 25% vacancy rate. The decision to return to 6.41% was because 6.41% was the budgeted amount last year. So after kind of looking at the current vacancies and potential positions that could be filled, our math kind of came up to roughly what was budgeted last year. So that recommendation just simply returns the budgeted amount to what it was in fiscal 2026.
So if I could follow up on that too. So you're concerned that the budget is there for personnel that is not being used and is being used to supplement budget elsewhere? Is that
Regarding the budgeted turnover rate?
Yeah.
So regarding the budgeted turnover rate, we just think that the allowance includes, was it 5.67% for their budgeted turnover rate? We just don't think that they're going to reach 5.67%. We think that 6.41% is a much more realistic figure. And so because of that, the general funds aren't needed to support the, I guess, the positions, since there will be vacancies there.
But at the same time, identified in the report is that the need is actually much, much greater.
Then yes, the need for positions is much greater because they would need 1,025 attorneys to meet standards. However, there are no positions being added in the budget, except for 0.42 contractual full-time equivalent positions. So since there aren't any regular positions being added, that OPD is continuing with the current, with its current, I guess, staffing situation. We feel that the rate of 6.41% is a appropriate figure.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, the analysts? Okay, thank you. Ms. Dartig.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Natasha Dartig, Maryland Public Defender. Seated to my right is Keith Lottridge, Deputy Public Defender, and to my left, OPD Chief Financial Officer Thaddeus Hubbard. First, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to discuss FY budget for the Office of the Public Defender and to respond to the Department of Legislative Services FY 27 budget analysis. We recognize and thank Scott Benson, our DSL budget analyst, for his expertise and thorough, insightful analysis. In our discussion today, I want us to frame it through a metaphor. And the metaphor that I would like to use is the reality show Survivor. Now, if you watch the show, you know the premise. Contestants are placed on an island with almost no supplies. They must build shelter from whatever they can find, forage for food, and complete increasingly difficult challenges with limited tools and even less rest. The ones who survive are those that are able to go through it with resilience, teamwork, and creativity. And that is not because they have what they need. This is the year, and this is how it feels at OPD. We are on an island. We've been surviving through grit and creativity, not because we have what we need. So today, I want to explain to you what survival mode looks like and ask you for the tools to move from surviving to being a stable unit. So the numbers tell a stark story. In FY 25, we handled 116,330 new cases. This was up from 110,400 the year before. We represent nearly 80% of individuals who are charged in criminal cases in Maryland. That's about 8 out of 10 of every person who's facing a criminal charge in the state. Our juvenile caseload surged 20% in the last year, from 3,736 cases in FY 25 to 4,497 cases in 3,736 cases in FY 24 to 4,497 cases in FY 25. That's 761 more children we were required to represent. We received no additional resources for that surge. Our staffing reality. We have 625 attorneys in filled positions. We have 338 core staff. Core staff are our investigators, our paralegals, our social workers, and our administrative personnel. We're operating with a 10% vacancy rate, which equals 54 vacant attorney positions and 48 vacant support staff positions. Now, the National Public Defense Workload Study that was conducted by the RAND Corporation and the American Bar Association analyzed what we actually need. From their findings, OPD needs 2.5 to 3 times more attorneys. That's 1,560 to 1,875 attorneys just for the adult criminal trial work. The national study did not include juvenile representation, appellate work, mental health cases, parental defense, or post-conviction matters. These are all areas that are part of the representation we currently do. The reality is that you cannot make 625 attorneys do the work that's required by 1,875 people, no matter how efficient or resourceful you are. We've tried every efficiency measured, streamlined processes. We've built every shelter we can with the sticks that we have. But there are no more survival tactics left. We need actual resources. Now let me explain what the crisis looks like beyond our head count. In 2005, When the caseload standards were originally created, a criminal case consisted of paper documents in a folder. Police reports, witness statements, photographs. An attorney could review the entire file in an afternoon. The 2005 standard says spend about 14 hours on this case. I fast forward to 2026. Today, a single felony case can include 50 or more hours of body cam footage, 10,000 text messages extracted from cell phones, complete social media histories, GPS location data, cell tower records, Ring doorbell videos, dash cam footage, and surveillance from multiple sources. One murder case, for example, could be 200 hours of surveillance footage alone, thousands of text message and cell tower records requiring expert analysis. The 2005 standard still says 14 hours. The actual time needed to review this digital evidence, 40 to 250 plus hours. And this is before you even do any legal research, file any motions, or before actual trial preparation. What is happening now is that we're using standards designed for paper files to handle terabytes of digital data. We're asking attorneys to build satellites with stone tools. This is where technology becomes essential. Right now, we have 81 licenses for a transcription platform called Justice Text that is serving 625 attorneys. That's 13% coverage. We have 55 attorneys in a pilot program for digital evidence management. That's 8.8% coverage. Less than 1 in 10 of our attorneys have access to the tools that would let them search video footage, transcribe interviews, and analyze digital evidence efficiently and easily. What is happening now, we are forced to ration essential tools, create wait lists, and some attorneys get this technology, some don't. We need $2.2 million annually to provide these tools to all 625 of our attorneys. Independent analysis shows that every attorney would gain about 60 to 75 minutes per day. That's a 5-to-1 return on investment over 10 years, and it unlocks $101 to $106 million in labor value. What's the alternative? Hire 122 additional attorneys to manually process all the digital evidence at a cost of $250 million over 10 years. So we have $2.2 million annually versus $250 million over a decade. Investing in OPD technology is a fiscally responsible choice. We're also facing critical funding crises in 2 additional areas: unfunded mandates and the panel attorney crisis. First, unfunded mandates. We are required by law to provide assisted outpatient treatment representation, which is specialized mental health work. This requires extensive client assessment, psychiatric record review, coordination with treatment providers, and multiple hearings and ongoing monitoring. The funding we receive for this mandate, $0 in FY26, $0 in FY27, and $0 in any future year. We are providing specialized mental health representation for free while we are officially understaffed. Second area of crisis that I emphasize is our panel attorney system. The panel attorney system, as you can see by the rope demonstrative, it represents our panel system. When we have conflicts of interest or co-defendant cases, we are constitutionally required to retain private counsel. In FY25, we spent $12.3 million on these constitutionally mandated cases. Then challenges of being on the island, Survivor Island, forced us to reduce that panel attorney funding by $1.6 million. The fraying of the rope that was once a strong support for OPD. Panel attorneys are now declining cases because the hourly rates have not kept up with inflation or the increased complexity of the cases. When panel attorneys decline, the cases are not moving forward. That causes a severe bottleneck in the resolution, not only for the accused, but also the victims. The bottom line is the tribe is shrinking when we needed it most. So what are we asking for? We have 5 targeted requests, 5 ways to stabilize OPD. Key 1, stabilize staffing by allowing OPD to fill critical vacancies with competitive compensation. We can hire. In FY24, we hired 208 people. We need the funding and the salaries to be competitive enough to retain experienced attorneys and court staff members. We need the ability to build towards the workload study standards with a phased and realistic approach. We are in contract, we have contracted the RAND Corporation for a Maryland-specific data report that is expected to come out in summer of 2026. We are asking for the ability to continue to move a path forward, to continue to support our team members. Key 2 would be to fund the digital technology that we need at the $2.2 million annually. I explained the return on investment, and again, this is an alternative to $250 million in hiring cost. Key 3 would be to support panel attorney recruitment with fair compensation. This is constitutionally mandated representation, and it needs the funding. We ask that you take us from frayed to fortified. Key 4, address the unfunded AOT, assisted outpatient treatment mandate, with dedicated resources. You cannot require specialized mental health representation and fund it at $0. Key 5, we ask to be able to achieve pay parity with the Office of the Attorney General staff. OPD staff do comparable work and should receive comparable pay. I'll give you an example. Right now, we are training attorneys who leave our office for the AG's office because of the salary differential. OPD starting salary for an experienced attorney is $107,687, $107,000. OAG for the same individual, the starting salary is $114,875. That's approximately $7,000 higher starting salary at the AG's office. I ask that there is no decrease to OPD budget, and I ask there is no reduction made. These requests are targeted, achievable, and represent the minimum tools needed to fulfill our constitutional mandate. Let me close with this. When a defense system is understaffed, the entire justice system suffers. Courts backlog, victims wait, cases delay, trust erodes. Stable defense equals stable justice. Prosecutors, courts, victims, clients, everyone depends on a functioning public defense system. In Survivor, you can make it through the early stages with grit. Contestants improvise, adapt, survive on resilience, but you cannot build a sustainable future without tools. You cannot serve justice on willpower alone. We have survived on resilience long enough. OPD staff show up every day handling impossible caseloads because they believe in justice, because we believe in justice. Willpower cannot replace the resources that we need. So I ask you, please give us the tools so that we continue doing the important work that Maryland depends on us to do. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you. Senator Lewis Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have a couple of questions, and I can go back and repeat them. To what extent will federal employee layoffs assist you in your recruitment efforts? As we all know, a substantial number of federal employees residing in Maryland have been laid off. Many have law degrees. To what extent are you using AI to support increased efficiency? Question 3, why didn't you address unfunded mandates in the fiscal note as the legislation passed? And finally, our governor announced that the crime rate is down statewide and state of the state. To what extent will that have an effect on your demand for resources? Or could the reverse occur in that if you don't have sufficient resources, could that reverse that trend? And happy to repeat those.
I will, thank you, Senator, for your questions. And I will probably ask at some point to repeat them, but I've jotted some notes. So yes, thank you for your questions. In regards to federal employees, we have had the opportunity to interview federal employees for vacant positions. And the challenge comes in terms of the salaries that we offer. And especially when we see the federal employees who apply, we're talking, as much as like $50,000 difference from the feds to what they are receiving. And then we have the competition, for example, with the AG's office, so that even if they were willing to take that pay cut, it is not as significant, for example, if they were go to the Office of the Attorney General or somewhere else. But we have been excited about the federal employees who have applied for different positions. We actually were successful in terms of our fiscal division to get a federal employee within the last year. So they are definitely welcome, and the work is important work that we do. We just hope that we can be more competitive in terms of salary, because people do have to pay their mortgages, they have to pay their student loans, they have to keep their lights on. In regards to AI, we are navigating the field just as everyone else. There are additional safeguards that we must take as a law firm in terms of the use of AI, and we're all familiar with as AI is developing and some of the pitfalls of that. Westlaw is, for example, a search engine that we use for legal research. Westlaw is developing a Westlaw AI that we have partnered with the Office of the Attorney General to adopt that contract. So when there are opportunities for partnerships to lessen the cost of contracts, we are also doing that. So when we talk about AI, Westlaw AI is one of the areas in which we are doing that, and we're able to incur some savings by partnering with the Office of the Attorney General. In terms of AOT, I will start briefly, and then I will tap in my deputy by saying that the Office of the Public Defender, we do not shy, and we have always been vocal in terms of being under-resourced. There are times when we are between a rock and a hard place, where we are under-resourced, but then we also recognize opportunities, and I'm speaking generally, when opportunities for a particular law to serve our clients. But we always make it known, in fact, that in order to do things new, you have to support us with resources to be able to do the new. And I will ask Deputy Lottridge to speak more on that.
I believe your question really was about the fiscal note. We did actually, on AOT and on many, we actually did submit a fiscal note. And AOT, I specifically remember sitting down and having multiple meetings about what it would be. And one of the problems we had is the creation of AOT is an entirely new system in Maryland, so we had high projections and low projections. We submitted closer to our low projections, which still required us to hire, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20-plus attorneys and other staff. And then actually the locations, because this is a statewide program, although it will be rolled out it's being rolled out in the next month or so, 2 months. It'll start on the Eastern Shore, Baltimore County, Baltimore City, and Anne Arundel, and a few others. It won't be statewide for the first couple of months. So again, we did have a fiscal note. We had an entire structure. We put it all in our fiscal note with what we thought it would cost. And as I mentioned, the empty jar, we received 0. I would note that these cases will be handled by our mental health division. We have 15 attorneys in that division. They currently represent every client in a mental health hospital or the jails that are hospitals and have mental health patients, inmates. And quite frankly, they are far beyond capacity already. So we honestly, it's a valid question. We did address it. We just didn't get the resources, and we just don't have the capacity at this time. I would go back briefly to the AI, which I believe Madam Public Defender addressed briefly. When she mentioned the 2 programs earlier, like Justice Techs and some others, they also have AI components. As a matter of fact, I was just on the phone with an attorney who was talking about doing one of the tests and the ability to, literally just earlier today, put in, I think it was over 100 hours of video, and within 3 minutes got to the exact data she needed. That is a shocking ability. Now, there's still a lot of due diligence. As an attorney, you still have to go through a lot of that no matter what, but it makes a huge difference. So where possible, we're utilizing it. The problem is, again, we have 81 of those licenses for 625 attorneys.
And I believe the last question, if you would phrase about the crime rate.
Crime rate is going down statewide. Governor announced it. So my question is, both sides of the coin, would that require less resources on your part? Or could the reverse be true? If you don't have the resources, could that trend reverse?
So I would answer the question this way. The Office of the Public Defender has always been under-resourced. And when we make our ask, we are making the ask to try to get to the starting line. We are so far behind. So as crime decreases and as the state puts resources into prevention, as well it should, and we always are advocating in terms of prevention and going to the source of the problem, what that will do is benefit the community as a whole, but also benefit the Office of the Public Defender in terms of kind of slowing down the flow of things and allowing our caseloads to hopefully over time come to a manageable rate. Right now, attorneys are carrying excessive numbers of cases, which translates into a tremendous workload. As technology increases, the practice is getting more cumbersome. So it is hopeful that over time we see less individuals coming into the criminal legal system, the less number of cases, and hopefully we get to the point that we even out. But I think that would be the initial impact. But we are so far behind in terms of our resources. I'm not sure if
You're not there yet.
Yeah, we're not there yet. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And if I could add briefly, we agree the crime rates are down. But for instance, last year, something minor happened in the legislature, which was reckless driving became jailable. That's not a big deal, and that's not going to be reflected in crime rate. What that does mean, we just dropped in an extra 1,000 or 2,000 clients. There's all these minor things which tweak our numbers. In point of fact, our numbers have declined if you look back 20 years. I think it's in the report. But they have leveled off. In the last 5 years, they've been relatively level. What hasn't leveled off is the amount of work, and I think Madam Public Defender addressed that. One case in 2005 was 14 hours, and now it's hundreds of hours. So while we're having a leveling off, and maybe even we might hopefully get a dip, I think we should if crime rates continue down. The workload is in no way reducing. If anything, it's expanding exponentially. So that's our
Thank you very
conclusion.
much for that information. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Rosa Pope.
Quick question, the 13 licenses you referred to,
81.
81 licenses, these are 81 licenses for what?
That particular program is called Justice Text.
What does it do?
Justice Text has an AI component, but basically you can, all of the data that you would get digitally, whether that's ring bell camera, cruiser camera, body cam, anything else, everything in a cell phone can be uploaded into the software.
Okay.
Then, for instance, I could have everything on a screen. I'd text in, when does the person in an orange shirt appear? It would show me.
And it would pull it out.
It would pull it up. It would
Yeah,
tell me the time.
I got it.
It would the interview would be uploaded. We would get a transcript of the interview. That interview may be 7 hours. When you're an attorney and you're looking at an interview, you realize a 7-hour interview, there's really only about 2 hours of dialogue. But you have a due diligence to watch the whole thing. Getting a transcript,
Yeah.
I can go through very quickly.
Yeah, I got
Now I get a transcript that says, tell when they say this. So it gives us that.
No, I got it. That explains it. How much are these licenses?
Right now, so we would need an entire agency license. So depending on which service we're looking at, it's about, to get everybody covered on everything we would need, and you also have to address storage because we're talking a voluminous amount. Worried about the licenses for Justice Text, I think is around 600,000 or 700,000, and then for the other data, the ability to store the data and the other service we need, we're looking at about 2.2 million for the agency.
Per license?
No, not
no,
per
in
license.
total,
That's for an
total.
entire agency license. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know the.
I'm just trying to get a sense of scale here. I mean, you say 81 is too few, I thought.
Right.
That's because every attorney needs the license.
Okay.
So
How much is one license for one attorney?
I'll have to get you that. Honestly,
Okay,
I didn't
that's
get,
fine.
I didn't get that data. I had a sense for the entire agency. We
No, I
could get that
understand.
code.
That's fine. I'm just curious on the scale issue. Well, you can get it to us. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Senator Salling.
You talked briefly about the hours per case. Do you have an average per case?
So-
Average hours, you have so many different types of cases, I'm sure. But do you have like an average hours of so many cases or different type of cases that you could probably bring up and
So-
talk about?
we are currently doing the Maryland workload study. And part of the time analysis is part of that. So that will be part of the report
So
that will
the
come
report.
out. in-
Okay, yeah, I saw that,
then
but I
at the
thought maybe you
summer.
had some, okay.
Yes.
Do you usually use one caseworker per, or at times do you have to use two, or how does that work?
We do not have and when you say caseworker, you mean like a social?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, yeah, so we do not have the luxury of having multiple social
Right.
workers at a case. Currently, we have about 40, 44.
For social workers.
For social workers for the entire agency.
Okay.
So we are woefully understaffed in terms of social workers.
I understand that. And you talked briefly about unfunded mandates,
Yes.
and I know you brought one case up. How many others can you bring up that you could say that you have these unfunded mandates types?
AOT is the most recent example.
For instance, the reckless driving we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Technically, that is a new law which created cases. That's an unfunded mandate. We're required to be in those cases.
You just got that.
Anything that changes or increases I mean, honestly, I'm blanking on, there's probably 15 in the last 3 years I could come up with. But AOT is the most dramatic that's been recent. We've had things in the juvenile arena where we've also had the same thing. It's a little awkward for us to come out and say we shouldn't do these things, quite frankly, because they are to the benefit of our client. But in this setting where we're talking about our needs to actually advocate for our attorneys and our constitutional duty to our clients, we have to acknowledge they're unfunded mandates. But doesn't mean we don't want those advances.
It happens.
It just,
Yeah.
you gotta fund us, because otherwise it's a law we can't comply with. So, but if you want, I can probably go through and give you a list.
I mean, yeah, I think it would be helpful just to know those, that's all. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. Did I hear you correctly saying that 80% of everyone facing criminal charges, state criminal charges in this state is your client?
That is an approximate number, yes. I think it's like 76%.
For criminal, it's about
for criminal case.
76. For parental defense, we're well into the high 90s. Juvenile, we're well into the 90s. Mental health, the number of people who aren't represented by us in the state is probably you can count on one hand. So when 80 is probably an amalgamation, but it really does, I think, represent the fair estimate.
Okay. And I know this is hard because it hasn't started, it hasn't really been rolled out, but AOT, what were your estimates about what kind of use folks would avail themselves of the program that then you would be representing? Do you have, and we can go dig out the fiscal note, because I just don't remember.
So it's interesting because the implementation of AOT is really, and I will say the health department's been meeting with us regularly. We've been talking implementation, but the way it's written, basically anybody who's had certain mental health episodes that have been reported in the last number of years could be subject to this. The way it's written right now, that would include persons who have drug addiction problems. If you included them, our potential scope of clients was over 100,000. We don't think that's happening, but it is something we have to be cognizant of the fact that doesn't mean that somebody in some county won't file it, and there's a legal justification for filing it for somebody who has a drug conviction even. So our estimates are on the low side. I don't remember the number we were suggesting, and the health department and we were going back and forth, but we were coming up a conservative estimate of over 20 attorneys.
And when does that actually roll out?
July 1st.
So is this a timing issue, in your opinion, in terms of its reflection in the budget? Or have you had conversations and they said, sorry, we can't do anything right now?
We can't do anything right now. And to be,
2024, though.
yeah, this was passed several years ago. This is not a practice you can jump into in day one.
Sure.
This is, first of all, it's a civil practice. There aren't that many public defenders who have a civil background. I have a little bit, and I can tell you it's a much different than the criminal practice. Two, it's a mental health civil practice, which is a very specialized, meaning you have to understand all of the, basically it's very doctor report heavy. We really wanted about 6 months to get people hired and trained to do this. At this point, we're trying to train the attorneys we have in our mental health division to do a new type of practice, and that's on top of what they're already doing, and quite frankly, they don't have the capacity to do their day job as it is. So it hasn't started yet, but we should have been spinning this up in the last 6 months.
Okay. So this is a budget analysis that, and you have a number of deficiencies, which is, you know, it actually has been happening a bit more of late. So you are not totally unique, except that, and you reflected this in your response to the budget analysis, that you are required, constitutionally required, to provide services. This is not discretionary or optional in any way. And so I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about that a bit, and the rock and the hard place that you find yourselves having to do certain services. It's not like you have the option of paring back. So could you just sort of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. So the Office of the Public Defender is constitutionally mandated to provide legal representation to indigent individuals. So the challenges that you hear about in terms of deficits, especially the paneling, so that is essentially out of our control. If there is a case where 4 individuals are arrested, 4 individuals qualify for our services, what generally takes place is that we will represent the most culpable, but then we are required to retain representation for the other 3 persons. And we do so because we are required to do so. And the fee is related to the type of case it is, and the hours are related to the type of case that it is. So as you can imagine, a more egregious case, as a murder case, takes an incredible number of hours versus perhaps a simple theft case. We are not in the position to say, no, we will not represent you. You qualify for the services. We are required to represent you. If there are co-defendants and they qualify for the services of the public defender's office, we are not in the position to say, no, we will not work to retain private counsel. In representation of individuals, we have to conduct investigations, we have to incorporate the services of social workers, whatever experts are needed. So again, I use the example of a murder case. If there is DNA involved, we need a DNA expert. In terms of technology, especially as technology gets more sophisticated, we may need an expert in those areas. So we are required to retain an expert. We do have a pool of experts in different practice areas that do work with the public defender's office, that do offer their expertise at an extremely reduced rate than if, for example, a private attorney were to retain them. But again, in the defense of the case, if that is what is needed, we are not only constitutionally mandated to do so, but our rules of professional responsibility require us to provide that level of representation. So when we see the growing budget and the growing numbers, it is not by choice, it is by necessity. We are a defense firm. So essentially, as a defense firm, we take what comes to us and we respond accordingly. The resources that we have, the employees of the Office of the Public Defender, when you think about the number of cases, over 110,000 cases a year that we represent individuals, and the overwhelming level of representation from the core staff to the attorneys. I cannot speak enough about that, and I advocate for resources. And at this point, it's just for them to do the work that they do consistently at not even a luxury level. We are asking for resources so that we can maintain. I also emphasize that as a defense firm, we are responding to the prosecution's office, but we're also responding to law enforcement. And what's important to understand is that for a system to be fair, the scales have to be balanced. And as we continue to pour money into law enforcement and the prosecutor's office, we must equally be pouring money into our defense system. That is the only way that we're going to ever establish a system that is fair in the state of Maryland. And I think, did you want to add?
Oh,
Yeah.
actually, I thought you covered it very well. But can I give one real-life example of what happened when we started this workload study? We're doing this workload study. We brought in the same corporation and organization did it for the nation, and their courts use them to create their own studies. We brought them in for the state of Maryland. After my first couple of interactions with them, we started having them talk to our attorneys. And I got a phone call from the person heading this. His phone call was, Keith, I've just had a conversation with several of your district court attorneys, and quite frankly, I'm not really seeing the issue here. I asked them about their caseload, and they gave me their numbers, and you're not that far off from a lot of other places. And in some point of fact, in some states, you're less. And I said, okay, let me ask you a question. Tell me what exactly you asked them. He said, I just asked them what your current caseload is. I said, did you ask them for a time frame? Well, no. He said, do me a favor. Call me back in an hour after you call them all. He calls back in an hour, and he has an entire team on the call. And he starts with, and actually I'll take out the actual words and just say, oh my God. They were talking about 1 week or 1 month, not a year. The state of Maryland, our attorneys, our public defenders are handling cases that quite frankly are shocking to people who analyze this across the country. They're doing so much work and quite frankly doing it amazingly well, but it's not sustainable.
Well, they're certainly not doing it for the money. Right. Senator Lewis Young.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I want to shed a little bit of additional light on the AOT. I was the lead sponsor of the bill for 2 years in the House before the governor took over the lead sponsorship and got it passed. There's nothing in the bill that enforces it, which is problematic. We know there's about 100,000 individuals in the state with severe mental illness. If you're severely mentally ill, probably you don't recognize you have a problem or you don't want to deal with it. If you recall, ACLU was against the bill and the Maryland Department of Mental Health was against the bill because they felt you shouldn't force people into doing something. And that's why the bill, for all intents and purposes, doesn't have any teeth. So you give someone a court order to go into the AOT program, nothing forces them to go. Nobody's putting them in jail. Nobody's taking them off in handcuffs. 6 months later, they come back and you remind them again, you really should go into this program. There's nothing enforceable. So my point is, your conservative estimates might not be conservative enough. Hate to be pessimistic, but
Well, you mean you think we'll have fewer people? I'm hoping.
no, actually not. I wish more people would take advantage of it.
I don't think you're going to find anybody in the public defender's office who doesn't want resources for people with mental health issues.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not suggesting that.
But and I applaud the effort of the legislature to try to address this. But you guys wrote us into the bill,
Yeah.
and you wrote in that we have to represent people.
That's true.
And you put a lawyer into the world, and you make that world much more complicated. We have an ethical duty, and whether that person recognizes they have a mental health problem, or they do or don't, they are not incompetent, which means we are a
Right.
stated interest law firm. You put us in, they tell us what to do.
Okay, so you're saying your caseload isn't necessarily going to be reduced because it's really not enforceable.
Yeah.
No, I
Okay.
think, I think the way
I don't think we need to relitigate the bill.
Yeah.
All right.
If I just
No,
may-
I'm going back to the numbers, the
Yeah,
demand.
yeah.
If I just make, I think it's important to clarify, though, when a bill comes forward, we have to prepare. So be it 5 people or 500 people, we have to be prepared. So part of the cost that we incur is in the preparation, is in the training, is in making sure that when the cases come, be it 5 or 500, we are ready to provide that representation.
Senator Roosevelt.
I got a quick question. I didn't follow your math about the caseload with the guy calling your lawyers once and then talking to you and then calling him back. I didn't follow the math at all.
So the bottom line is, I wasn't in the conversation, but somebody calls one of my attorneys and says, how many cases do you have right now?
Yeah,
The answer is, I have 150.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. They write 150 down.
Yeah.
What they meant was, how many cases do you handle in a year? And that's the number they were getting from other locations. They didn't specify the question well enough.
Okay.
They called back, and it's not for a year, it's for this month.
Okay, now I understand the math. So my follow-up to that, and I will be brief and then we'll wrap this up, is were these folks who were doing this survey for you, they do that with other states too?
Yes, they did the national workload study.
That's what I thought.
Yes, the RAND Corporation.
So are our workloads much bigger per capita or whatever the measure is than other states?
Yes.
Why?
It's the structure of Maryland system. First of all, the district court system, this would take a long time, and I will.
Yeah, we don't have a long time. Short version.
But Maryland's system is very odd. The district court system, this de novo appeal to circuit court, a misdemeanor in Maryland can carry 10, 15 years under certain conditions. Maryland is a very bizarre outlier. And also the commissioner charges.
Sorry, can I interrupt 1 second? An outlier in terms of our criminal penalties, an outlier in terms of
Just how the system works. It's
If I may simplify. So one of the differences is how the criminal system is structured in Maryland. So because we have a district court separated from a circuit court, you do not find that that's not the norm across the country. As well as Maryland has different specialty courts.
Yeah.
And that structure is not necessarily mirrored in other places in the country. So that would be the super simplified answer.
Thank you. I mean, Madam Chairman, I think this issue is an issue that we really need to put on our list to understand. I mean, I never studied judiciary. I don't understand that stuff at all.
Yes.
And it definitely had big budget implications, so I think we ought to look at it.
No, we welcome the opportunity to have additional conversations because this is important in terms of understanding how the office has to operate to be able to be responsive to the way the system is set up and how this structure also incurs different and additional costs. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being here. So we do have a couple of public witnesses, and I would ask you to come up. I have Jennifer Curran, Tom McCurdy, Carly Town, James Dills. And why doesn't everybody come up at once, please? And we'll,
Grab that, Mrs. Chair.
we'll start with Jennifer Curran.
Yes. Good afternoon, I think. Chair, members of the subcommittee, my name is Jennifer Curran, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the OPD. As COO, I work to improve the operating procedures and promote efficiency. Information technology and facilities report directly to me. I was also an attorney here for 23 years, so I know the daily work of our lawyers in every division. We are in survivor mode. The software gap growing between the prosecution and the defense is approaching constitutional dimensions. In this world of data, we are wielding stone clubs in the face of laser guns. There are 24 states' attorneys' offices and 170 police offices across the state. Each one has their own cutting-edge software to handle the enormous amounts of footage that come from things such as body cameras, surveillance videos, ring cameras, and phones, while our state's public defender's office has not been funded to keep pace. The counties are coming at us with 19 different platforms from which our lawyers receive discovery. We scramble to find ways to upload, store, and manage this vast amount of footage, and that is just the retrieval of the data. The bigger time loss is in reviewing the footage without the ability to transcribe it, to search for key terms so that we're able to jump to those important moments. We calculated the potential savings in labor value over 10 years on time spent reviewing evidence without software at $101 to $108 million. Not to mention the morale and retention issues caused by hours upon hours of watching these videos. We have done our own due diligence and tested software options with pilot projects such as Justice Text, Reduct, and Axon platforms across the state and have seen amazing results. Minutes rather than hours are spent searching footage, and it preserves our confidentiality. The increasing time spent with data inefficiently is compounding the burden of our extreme staffing shortage, and I'm here to ask you to help us to get out of survivor mode.
Mr. McCurdy?
I don't think he's
Nobody?
here.
Here? Okay. Ms. Town?
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Chair Hedelman, members of the committee. My name is Carly Town. I'm a felony attorney in Baltimore County's Public Defender's Office, but I am testifying before you today as a proud member of AFSCME Local 423, the Maryland Defenders Union. I also proudly serve as an attorney board member on our executive board. Today, I want to talk about the work that we as public defenders do for the people of Maryland, the importance of our work, and the conditions of what that looks like on the ground. Public defense is not a line of work that one trips and falls into. It is a calling. It is demanding, draining, oftentimes emotionally and physically, but it is also deeply rewarding. And I can confidently say that all of my colleagues are incredibly passionate about providing the most vulnerable among us in Maryland with the level of representation that they are constitutionally entitled to. However, high caseloads and lack of resources make that often untenable and unsustainable. Even the most passionate employees cannot withstand the demands and the lack of resources. And I cannot tell you the amount of colleagues that I have had to see leave this line of work that they have felt called into because they cannot withstand the what it is doing to their mental health, and they can't continue this work. And the vacancies that we have will not get filled until the conditions improve and until resources improve, because nobody wants to jump on a sinking ship. And high caseloads means less resources that I have, less time, energy, and resources that are spent on each client. And each client deserves more than we're able to give them. And they are also constitutionally entitled to that representation. So I'm here asking that you support increased compensation for our state employees and increased resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dills.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Jim Dills. I am the District Public Defender in Baltimore County. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to speak with you today. In 2025, the Office of the Public Defender in Baltimore County handled over 22,500 cases with 53 attorneys. The numbers are staggering. Between our three divisions, we handle misdemeanor, felony, and traffic cases, appeals, violations of probation, contempt cases, bail reviews, juvenile delinquency cases, juvenile waiver and transfer cases, juvenile detention hearings, and many other post-trial hearings. We are constantly looking for efficiencies, whether that's cross-training employees, combining jobs, or changing processes. We're always looking to try to make things as lean as possible. However, it doesn't solve the problem. Taking resources away from one area simply creates a hole in another. We simply don't have enough sticks to build the roof. Use discovery as an example. Every day we receive dozens of cases worth of discovery. For each case, the amount of data that we receive is astronomical. Consider all the reports, cell phone extractions, video surveillance, body-worn cameras, scientific evidence, medical records, witness interviews, police reports. We are dealing with not just gigabytes, but sometimes terabytes of information in one case. The processing, the storage, and the review of this material is simply not manageable. The OPD is a first-line responder to some of society's most pressing issues, whether that's homelessness, mental health issues, drug addiction, or immigration concerns. Each of those is so intricately woven into the criminal case that somebody faces. It is not only our constitutional mandate, but it's our moral responsibility to help people who are facing these challenges. It is imperative that we be put in an equal footing to other stakeholders in the criminal justice system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you. That will conclude the hearing for OPD, and we will move on to the State Lottery and Gaming Control Agency. I'd like to call up Budget Analyst Elizabeth Weibel. Weibel, right?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The allowance for the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Agency in fiscal '27 increases by about $2 million, or 1.5%, to a total of $135 million. About 90% of the budget is in special funds, which come primarily from lottery revenues. The budget bill also includes fiscal 2026 deficiencies for personnel and lottery vendor costs, which are based on revenues. On page 2 of the analysis, Exhibit 1 shows the largest area of spending is in contracts for lottery tickets, equipment, and monitoring, as well as for slot machine monitoring at casinos. Those three major contracts make up about 42% of the budget, and then regular personnel account for about a third of the budget. On page 3, Exhibit 2 shows the proposed budget change. Personnel costs are the largest area of growth. They increase about $2.4 million for the agency's more than 350 state employees. The largest lottery operations contracts decreased by $696,000 after accounting for those fiscal 2026 deficiencies. The key observations begin on page 5. The lottery revenues are pretty stable, but the proportion going to the general fund has decreased as state revenues are directed to other purposes. Exhibit 4 on page 6 shows the distributions of state lottery revenues. So in fiscal 2027, the general fund is expected to receive $472 million. The MLGCA receives $107 million for lottery operations, and then $87 million goes to the supplemental stadium financing, and then the rest is distributed to other purposes. Casino earnings are also pretty stable. I just wanted to mention there are departmental bills that would implement an audit's recommendation to allow state debts to be recovered from video lottery terminal prize winnings. Those bills are Senate Bill 176 and House Bill 289. There's an update on sports wagering that starts on page 9. Exhibit 7 shows the increase in state revenues following the legalization of sports betting, driven almost entirely by mobile betting. The first sports betting licenses issued in 2022 are coming due for renewal in fiscal 2027, so there's a small increase in revenue expected as license renewal fees are collected. Until last year, all state revenues from sports wagering and fantasy competitions went to the Blueprint Fund. However, the BRFA of 2025 increased the mobile sports wagering tax rate and directed the increase to the general fund. So in fiscal 2026, the general fund is projected to receive $28 million and the Blueprint Fund $87 million. Page 11 has some discussion on illegal online gaming. The Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Commission has been sending cease and desist letters to companies operating online gaming platforms without state license. The commission has determined that these include prediction markets where people can trade on contracts predicting the outcome of future sporting events. These are things like Kalshi, Crypto.com, Robinhood.com. And OAG is representing the state in litigation regarding the legality of these sporting events contracts. Key Observations 4 summarizes a survey on gambling prevalence in Maryland that was conducted in 2024. Found an increase in sports betting participation, primarily online or mobile. 11.5% of Maryland adults had used online or mobile sports betting in the past year, up from 3.4% in 2022. And you'll see DLS recommends concurring with the governor's allowance as shown on page 13. That concludes my presentation. I can take any questions.
Thank you very much. Senator Rosepep?
One question. On page 6, where you go through the distribution of the revenue, what is the supplemental stadium financing revenue?
I can look it up for you in a few minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
I believe that is for like the Orioles and the Ravens stadiums. It's falls under the Maryland Stadium Authority. A lot of the distributions do fall under the mayor or go through the Maryland Stadium Authority.
Well, if you could look it up and let us know.
Yep, definitely.
Senator Lewis, yeah?
Clarify statement you made. I know lottery revenues are down, and you mentioned that, but then you said revenues have actually been diverted. Could you clarify that? Because yes, they are diverted, they fund other things, but am I missing something there?
So the lottery sales, they are pretty, like the amount that is like of tickets that are sold, those are pretty stable. So the state revenues overall are pretty stable as well. It's just that less is going to the general fund and more is going to other purposes.
But according to the chart and the budget statements we've seen, revenues are down.
They are at least in fiscal 2025, they were down a little bit, but not down 4%. So there is a decrease, a small decrease.
Okay. Okay, I'll take it offline. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. We would call up John Martin, the director.
Good afternoon, Chair Hedelman and the members of the Public Safety, Transportation, and Environment Subcommittee of the Senate Budget and Taxation Committee. We welcome the opportunity to appear before you today to present the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Agency's fiscal 2027 operating budget. For the record, my name is John Martin, and I am the Director of the Maryland Lottery and Gaming Control Agency. With me today, to my right, is Paula Yoakum, Chief Financial Officer. Also in attendance, Angela Jones, our Budget Director, and Craig Lindsay, Deputy Director and Chief Operating Officer. At this time, we would like to thank the Department of Legislative Services, and particularly Elizabeth Weibel, for her excellent work and analysis on our budget. We would also like to thank Aidan Keenan and the Department of Budget and Management for their assistance in developing the agency's budget. You have our written testimony that goes into greater detail, but let me begin by giving you an overview of our fiscal 2025 results and an update on fiscal 26. Our agency contributed nearly $1.6 billion to support the state of Maryland's good causes, including but not limited to the Maryland Education Trust Fund, the Blueprint for Maryland's Future Fund, the state's general fund, as well as programs for public health and safety, the state's horse racing industry, the communities and jurisdictions where the state's 6 casinos are located, small, minority, women-owned business programs, and veterans organizations. Lottery ticket sales contributed over $667 million to the state, the 5th best total in Maryland's 52-year history. Meanwhile, casino gaming revenue contributed over $831 million, an increase of more than $7 million from fiscal 2024, and the 3rd best total in our casino program history. Sports wagering and fantasy competitions, including daily fantasy sports, combined to contribute over $90 million. The Maryland Lottery program has operated for over 50 years and enjoys broad participation across the state, as 78% of adult Marylanders report playing at least one lottery game in the past 12 months. Since its inception in 1973, traditional lottery sales have exceeded $65 billion and have contributed more than $20.7 billion in revenue to the state. Through the first half of fiscal 26, we are ahead of fiscal 25 in both sales, up 4.9%, and revenue, up 7.9%. The mission of the casino gaming program is to generate revenue for the state of Maryland and to create good-paying jobs while maintaining integrity, security, transparency, and fair play. From the opening of Maryland's first casino in September 2010 through the end of fiscal 2025, slot machine and table game revenues generated by our 6 casinos totaled more than $19.8 billion. Casino gaming contributions to the state through fiscal 25 in support of education totaled more than $6.4 billion. The distribution of casino gaming revenue is directed by statute. The casinos generated nearly $2 billion in gaming revenue from slot machines and table games during fiscal 2025. The 3rd best performance in the 15-year history of the program. Through the first half of fiscal 2026, casino revenue and contributions to the state are slightly down, less than 2% in both categories. A United States Supreme Court decision in 2018 paved the way for states to legalize sports wagering. With voter approval on a referendum in November of 2020, Maryland joined a growing list of states implementing sports wagering at brick-and-mortar locations in December of 2021 and on mobile platforms in November of 2022. Currently, there are 11 retail sportsbook facilities and 12 mobile online sportsbooks operating in Maryland. Each retail sportsbook contributes 15% of its taxable win to the Blueprint for Maryland's Future Fund, which supports public education programs. In fiscal 2025, these contributions totaled $89 million. Effective July 1st, 2025, 15% of mobile taxable win is directed to the Blueprint and 5% to the state's general fund. And with the release this week of January sports wagering results, we have surpassed last year's total and sit at $90 million, on pace to significantly increase contributions in fiscal 2026. The agency continues to significantly expand its organization-wide commitment to emphasizing the importance of responsible play across all lines of business. In fiscal 2025, the agency received our responsible gaming certification at the sustaining level, awarded by the North American Association of State and Provincial Lotteries, NASPL, our industry trade association, and the National Council on Problem Gambling. Agency staff continued to collaborate with the University of Maryland Center of Excellence on Problem Gambling, with regular meetings between the agency and the Center of Excellence staff to coordinate activities and training opportunities. The agency has also taken a position of leadership among 24 other gaming jurisdictions in North America. We meet monthly to share best practices on impactful regulations across a variety of critical issues, including addressing challenges with the illegal gaming market. We are seeing progress on many fronts as we collaborate on areas of mutual concern. In conclusion, as it relates to the fiscal 2027 budget, we concur with the DLS recommended action and request your approval of our fiscal 2027 budget as submitted. Thank you for your time. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Anybody? That was easy.
I love them when I stun them into silence.
Oh, yeah, actually, we have an answer to Senator Rosenfeld's question, so.
Yeah, you
go ahead.
asked about the supplemental stadium financing revenue. That is debt service for bonds issued to finance Oriole and Ravens stadium renovations. Yeah.
And if I may, Chair, just to address Senator Lewis Young's question about the, or do you want to?
I mean, I have a follow-up.
Okay, I was going to address your concern about the declining revenues. It's kind of a statistical anomaly. Fiscal 23 and fiscal 24 were the two best years in our lottery history. And so you're coming off that high water mark. Yes, we were down in fiscal 25, but it was still our fourth best year of the 52 years in existence. So as pointed out by Elizabeth, it really is not that significant a drop off when you look at the grand totality.
You had another question? Go ahead.
Anticipate, or do you have any strategic planning for future revenue opportunities?
We are always looking for future revenue opportunities. Do you have any?
You should talk offline.
We'll talk offline.
Right. No, we
just wanted to see.
Yeah, we continue across all three segments. On the lottery side, which of course we operate the lottery, so we have a team on staff dedicated to product development, looking at emerging technologies, making sure that we're providing games of interest to players. On the casino side and on the sports wagering, we regulate those entities, so we're not in a position really to dictate their plans, but we certainly look for things wherever we can, and as many of you are well aware, we continue to put forth legislation where we can look for opportunities to enhance our revenue potential.
Thank you.
Just let us know where your suggestion box is.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
We will move now to the Maryland Department of Transportation, the Maryland Port Administration. And welcome Sam Quest.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'm going to begin on page 1 of the DLS report with the operating budget for the Maryland Port Administration, which decreases by $1.8 million or 3% to $58.5 million. On page 2 of the report for the capital budget, the capital budget decreases $87.2 million or 20.5% to $339 million. The performance analysis section of the analysis on page 5, Exhibit 1, this is showing data on foreign cargo handled at the port. Foreign cargo reached its highest point ever in fiscal 23 at 52 million tons. However, due to the impacts of the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse, which temporarily closed access to the main shipping channel leading into the port, foreign cargo volumes declined by about 12% in fiscal 2024. However, in fiscal 25 are projected to again increase. On page 6, Exhibit 2 is showing data on the percentage of the Port of Baltimore's Mid-Atlantic market share following a slight decline in fiscal 2024. Fiscal 2025 is projected to return to 21%. And on page 7, Exhibit 3 is showing data on general cargo tonnage handled at the port, showing similar trends to the first exhibit. Following a high point in 2023, there were declines in 2024 due to the temporary port closure. However, fiscal 2025 showing an increase once again. Exhibit 3 shows that there were some differences among the different types of general cargo, although all categories of general cargo increased from 2024 levels except for roll-on, roll-off, which declined by an additional 15.6%. And auto tonnage saw the largest growth rate in fiscal 2025 and was the only category to exceed the 2023 levels. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows data on cruise ship operations at the port. You can see the big decrease in the middle of the chart during the pandemic when there was a period of no cruises operating for over a year. And then you can see a decline in fiscal 2024 relating to the temporary port closure, and then an increase in fiscal 2025 as cruises once again returned for a full year. Exhibit 5 on page 9 is showing the average truck turn times at the Seagirt Marine Terminal, which are a measure of the efficiency of operations. There's a goal of keeping these below 60 minutes, and in fiscal 2025, the metric was 51 minutes and was the 4th year in a row of meeting the 60-minute goal. On page 11, Exhibit 6 is showing the overview of agency spending for the operating budget. The personnel expenses and contracted security services combined make up about 68% of the operating budget. Contracted security services include personnel who are responsible for controlling access to the MPA-regulated marine terminals, where a security credential or an escort are required for entrance or exit. Contracted security services also include Maryland Transportation Authority police who provide law enforcement services through a contract with MPA. The proposed budget change shown on page 12, Exhibit 7, shows that the overall operating budget declines by about $1.8 million. The largest components of this decline are one-time spending in fiscal 2026, which include a $1 million grant to Sail Baltimore for dredging and preparation of the Sail 250 event in Baltimore scheduled for later this year, a $681,000 decline for a one-time deficiency appropriation for software licensing costs in fiscal 26, and a $168,000 decline due to energy performance contracts due to the conclusion of a loan repayment for that purpose in fiscal 2026. Personnel expenses declined by a total of $619,000, largely due to the transfer of 11 positions to the Secretary's office as part of an agency-wide consolidation of IT-related personnel. These declines in expenses more than offset the increases in utilities, which are the largest area of operating increases for water, sewage, electricity, and natural gas, which in total grow by about $580,000. On page 13, Exhibit 8 shows data on MPA operating revenues. MPA, along with the Maryland Transit Administration and the Maryland Aviation Administration, are three MDOT modes which generate operating revenues which are deposited into the Transportation Trust Fund. Exhibit 8 shows that fiscal 27 operating revenues for MPA were just over $55 million. At the bottom of page 13 for the data summary for personnel, this shows that MPA in the fiscal 27 allowance has 204 regular positions and 5 contractual positions. And the year-over-year change was the decrease in 11 regular positions that I mentioned previously. Turning to the discussion of the capital program, Exhibit 9 on page 15 shows a summary of the 6-year programmed capital spending. In total, across the 6 years, in the MDOT CTP, program capital spending totals $1.7 billion, and about 63% of 6-year capital spending is for system preservation needs. Exhibit 10 on pages 16 and 17 shows a table of the various projects that are included in the fiscal 27 capital allowance. Total fiscal 27 capital spending is $357.5 million. The largest component of that are funding for the Mid-Chesapeake Bay Island Ecosystem Restoration Project at about $146 million of the total. The next pages of the analysis provide an analysis of capital cash flow changes between the fiscal 26 budget as introduced, the fiscal 26 working appropriation, and the fiscal 27 allowance. Exhibit 12 on pages 19 and 20 show the changes between the fiscal 26 allowance and the working appropriation, which was a result of a $95.1 million increase in funding. The main components of this was a $122 million increase in spending for the Howard Street Tunnel project. Other increases included $30 million increase for Climate Solutions Now Act and related projects, and a $27.2 million increase for the Dundalk Marine Terminal Resiliency and Flood Mitigation Project, which more than offset decreases of the Mid-Chesapeake Bay Island Ecosystem Restoration Project due to moving that funding from fiscal 26 to fiscal 27. Exhibit 13 on pages 20 and 21 show an increase of $165.9 million in the fiscal 27 capital budget. The largest increase was $135.5 million for the Mid-Chesapeake Bay Island Ecosystem Restoration Project. The largest decrease was due to decreases in expenditures of $233 million for the Howard Street Tunnel project as that project nears its conclusion. On pages 22 and 23, there's discussion of first-year construction and design funding. Exhibit 14 on page 22 shows that the fiscal 2027 spending, 89% of it was for ongoing spending and 11% of it was for first-year spending. And page 23 shows a breakdown of the projects that received first-year construction and design funding in fiscal 26 and 27. The issues section includes a discussion of federal funding received by MPA. Page 24 discusses funding received under the Federal Clean Ports Program. A committee narrative in the 2024 JCR requested MPA to provide a report to the budget committees discussing this grant funding. In total, MPA has been awarded approximately $147 million for the deployment of zero-emission port technology as well as air quality improvements. In the report, MPA reported that as of December 2025, it had received federal reimbursements of approximately $585,000 in total, with additional federal reimbursements anticipated as procurements and project implementation continues. Exhibit 16 on pages 25 and 26 provide a list of the total discretionary federal grants awarded to MPA across federal fiscal 2021 through 2025, which totaled approximately $210.6 million. There were additional two grants that MPA submitted applications for that were under active consideration, which totaled approximately $28.8 million. The bottom of page 26 and 27 provide discussion of the four other grant agreements that the MPA is pending grant agreements with the federal government for. Committee narrative in the 2025 JCR requested that MPA provide quarterly status reports on all federal funds awarded to MPA. This report included discussion of 6 grant agreements that currently have federal grant agreements in place. 2 of those are for the Clean Ports program, which were previously mentioned. The other 4 include $125 million awarded for the Howard Street Tunnel program through the Federal Railroad Administration, of which $85 million in federal reimbursements have been received to date. The second was a $10 million grant awarded under the BUILD program through the U.S. Maritime Administration for the Dundalk Marine Terminal Resiliency and Flood Mitigation Project, of which approximately $345,000 in federal reimbursements have occurred to date. And then the last 2 include grants under the Port Security Grant Program through the Federal Emergency Management Agency. The first grant, all reimbursements have received through this program to date, and the second grant program, approximately $37,000 in federal reimbursements have been received to date. On the bottom of page 27, the Department of Legislative Services is asking MPA to comment to the committees to provide an update on any significant changes in the amounts of federal reimbursements that it has received to date through awarded federal grants, and have there been any factors that have delayed federal reimbursement processes or the execution of federal grant agreements for other federal grant that it has been awarded. On page 28 and 29 are the DLS recommended actions. DLS is recommending 2 pieces of committee narrative. The first is quarterly reporting on the Howard Street Tunnel project, to continue that reporting, which has been requested in prior years. The second item is requesting 2 reports on federal funds, including the Clean Ports program and other federal grants awarded to the agency. And then under the capital budget, the DLS recommendation is to concur with the governor's allowance. The final item in the analysis is an update of the Howard Street Tunnel project on page 30, which is projected to be fully complete in calendar 2027. And that concludes the DLS presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from Mr. Quest? All right. Thank you very much. And I'd like to ask Acting Secretary Thompson and Mr. Jonathan Daniels, Executive Director, to come up, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Heddleman and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Katie Thompson, Acting Secretary of Transportation, and I am joined this afternoon by Executive Director Jonathan Daniels. So thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss the Maryland Port Administration of MDOT. And thank you again to Sam Quist for his review of the department's budget. Maryland's port has continued to play an integral role in maintaining our nation's supply chain and bringing economic opportunity to Maryland. The Howard Street Tunnel project, which Mr. Quist referenced, is ahead of schedule. This completion is scheduled for later this year, and the initiative reconstructs the tunnel and makes necessary vertical clearance improvements at 22 locations along the CSX Baltimore to Philadelphia rail network to create a double-stack rail corridor for the Port of Baltimore. This project will increase business for the Port of Baltimore by approximately 160,000 containers annually and create more than 13,000 additional jobs. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, in partnership with the Maryland Port Administration, continues to move forward on the construction of the Mid-Chesapeake Bay Island Ecosystem Restoration Project that restores island habitat at the James and Barren Islands. This will provide over 35 years of dredged material capacity for our critical shipping channels. And for the 16th consecutive year, MPA's terminals received a top rating of excellent on a security assessment from the U.S. Coast Guard, further proof that the Port of Baltimore is not only one of the most productive ports in the United States, but also among the most secure. Now I'll turn it over to Executive Director Daniels to provide some additional information and address the DLS analysis.
Madam Secretary, thank you so much. Chair Hedelman, good afternoon, and members of the committee. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today to discuss the DLS analysis and to talk a little bit more in depth about where we stand with our budget talking points. I also would like to thank Sam for his work throughout the year. He's been absolutely fantastic analyst, and we certainly appreciate the opportunity to go through the results of his analysis. In calendar year 2025, the port continued to be ranked among one of the top ports in the nation, finishing first in roll-on, roll-off farm and construction equipment cargo. The port finished second among all U.S. ports for cars and light trucks, sugar, imported forest products, and imported gypsum. The MPA terminals handled 11.1 million tons of general cargo in 2025, and that's a 36% increase from 2024. Our state-owned and private terminals welcomed a record 2,223 ships in 2025, and that's a 21% increase over 2024. At our Seagirt Marine Terminal, the port's dedicated container terminal that's operated by our partners at Ports America Chesapeake, we broke records with more than 1.1 million 20-foot containers and 689 vessel calls. Again, a huge testament to Ports America Chesapeake and our excellent relationship and the work that's done by the International Longshoremen's Association labor force. Our cruise business continues to be a success story for Maryland. The Port of Baltimore is home to Carnival and Royal Caribbean, two of the largest cruise lines in the world. And just last week, Carnival announced a second ship that will sail out of Baltimore for the 2027-2028 season. Cruises are significant economic generators for Maryland. Every time a cruise ship arrives at the port, it generates about $1 million in economic benefits, which includes spending in our restaurants, hotels, shopping, and entertainment. The MPA's internationally renowned and award-winning dredging program rebuilds long-eroded Chesapeake Bay Islands with sediment from port channels, creating new habitats and supporting a diverse array of wildlife, all while ensuring a safe and navigable shipping channel. The importance of dredging and the state's dredge material management program cannot be overstated. In short, it is the lifeline for the Port of Baltimore. And to be clear, it's not just the state-owned piers and docks, but all 33 private terminals and local and regional businesses that benefit from the state's investment in this program. Every year, with help from our partners at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, nearly 5 million cubic yards of sediment are dredged from more than 130 miles of federal navigation channels just to maintain our current depths and widths. The internationally recognized model for the beneficial use of dredged material, the Paul Sarbanes Ecosystem Restoration Project at Poplar Island, is one of our sediment placement sites. To date, the MPA and the Army Corps have restored over 1,700 acres of remote island habitat. Once Poplar reaches capacity in 2032, our next environmental restoration project at the Mid-Chesapeake Bay Island Network is on track to be prepared to receive 2 to 3 million cubic yards of material annually. Equally important to the MPA is reducing air pollutants at the port and for its surrounding residential communities. Working closely with 6 major private sector maritime partners, the MPA began drawing down funding on a $147 million grant from the U.S. EPA Clean Ports Program, which will support and procure more than 213 new zero-emission vehicles and equipment and charging infrastructure to improve air quality at the port, as well as for our adjacent underserved communities. The port continues to recover from the Key Bridge incident. We have worked hard to bring our cargo back to Baltimore in in the time since, and that is an ongoing effort. But it's paramount that we continue to invest in the Port of Baltimore. Our business and tens of thousands of port jobs depend on it. We are in constant competition with other U.S. East Coast and Southeast ports to attract business. And for example, Virginia is investing $1.4 billion in deepening their channels to 55 feet, which will make them the deepest on the East Coast. Georgia is implementing a $4.5 billion self-funded capital program to significantly grow their container and roll-on, roll-off capacity in a direct attempt to take business from other ports, including Baltimore. It is an arms race in every sense of the word. In closing, I can say that I am so proud to state that, however, that the state of our port is strong and resilient, and we look forward to continuing to grow it as one of Maryland's leading economic engines. We have provided additional budget information to the committee for your reference, as well as written response to the DLS analysis. I would like to focus on our response to that DLS analysis right now. DLS requested MPA update the committee on any significant changes to the amounts of federal reimbursements the agency has received to date. The MPA has had no issues receiving federal reimbursements or drawing down disbursements. Additionally, the Dundalk Marine Terminal Berth 11 through 13 Phase 1 reconstruction project is currently under NEPA review, and it's anticipated that that will be completed in April of 2026. We do not anticipate any issues with grant agreement execution. Further, MPA concurs with DLS recommendations to continue reporting requirements on the Howard Street Tunnel project and updates on our other federal grants. With that, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Senator Roosevelt.
Thank you. Two questions. One is, over the last year, what impact have you seen in the port of the chaotic discussion, imposition, withdrawal of tariffs?
The lack of consistency with tariffs coming out, literally one day words are coming out and then it changes. That has probably done more to impact the Port of Baltimore as well as all ports that are out there. Meeting with many shippers and many carriers, they don't mind the fact that there may be tariffs at whatever rate. It's the lack of consistency that has been truly the driver and has not allowed them the opportunity to make a determination as to whether they're going to continue to produce products overseas and pay the tariff coming in, or bring in the components and develop manufacturing capacity in the United States and then pay the tariffs on those individual components. So it's a great point in that it's been the lack of consistency. They realize there could be tariffs, but the lack of consistency has hurt.
I agree with that, but I'm trying to understand if you have any data evidence of what the impact has been, in the sense of there was a lot of discussion about people who were trying to get ahead of the big tariff day and therefore doing stuff faster.
Sure, they did. So in calendar year 2025, in order to get in front of the tariffs, there was a lot of pre-positioning in the products. Our first quarter of last year was the strongest quarter we have ever had in the port's history. And it tailed off during the year as the inconsistency or the tariffs going in place continued to push through. We anticipated going off of a cliff in about June or July, midsummer. We did not see that cliff, but we did see a little bit of a ramping down of the amount of cargo moving across the docks. It did hit us significantly on the auto side throughout the calendar year, as it did with other ports that move that type of cargo, and on the forest products, the wood pulp, rolled paper, a lot of it coming out of the European market, that we saw significant reductions in some of that cargo and continue to feel that as of today.
On forest products and autos?
Yes.
Is anything up?
We've seen on the containerized cargo again.
On whatever, I mean, not cruise ships. I'm talking about.
No, the containerized cargo. Again, we set a record above 2023, and 2023 was really our bellwether year. And so I think a lot of that was driven by the early year 2025 surge that we did see coming across the dock. We also have seen we've gone from an average of 12 vessel calls a week at our container terminal to 15. And hence, while we saw that, that's the reason for the record coming across, the amount of vessels coming across is our Seagirt dock, as well as throughout the entirety of the port. Unfortunately, what we're not seeing is the amount of boxes coming in on those ships. So while we saw records, we only saw a very small increase in percentage increase in the amount of cargo coming across. But the fact that there is capacity there, certainly that draws upon us, working with our partners from Ports America Chesapeake and others, to get out and talk with the beneficial cargo owners to make sure that we're doing what's necessary to fill
So
those
the
ships.
average ship is bringing in less stuff?
Average ship is bringing, we're seeing more ships, but less cargo per ship.
Why is that?
You're just not seeing, you're seeing a cutback in manufacturing. Again, a lot of that was tariff driven.
No, I get that, but why more ships?
We have just seen more vessel calls, more trade lanes that have opened up, some Asian, some Northern Europe, trade lanes that have opened up as well. So we've been successful in that way, but just the amount of cargo.
Okay, I see.
And then you're seeing some of the trade lanes are a little bit oversubscribed. You're seeing Northern Europe that has a significant amount of capacity that's going across. So you're seeing that cargo split amongst many of the carriers.
I see. Okay, thank you. That answers that question.
Yes,
Second question is, other than the competition with other states investing in their ports, what's your biggest problem?
Right now, I think what we're seeing is the condition of many of our docks, is that the need for us to be able to make sure that we're continuing to invest in our facilities, is we cannot allow for our infrastructure to go downhill. We're not able to meet the obligations on our contractual arrangements, and other ports, again, just because they're investing, they have the additional docks that are ultimately in place.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator Solly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming down.
Thank you, sir.
I do have just a little bit just to talk about and some of the things that I know that's been happening. First of all, I want to thank you so much for your continuing to working with Trade Point Atlantic, because
Absolutely.
I know they've been a good partner.
Yeah.
And what they're doing and what you're doing is really making a difference for the Port of Baltimore, because I know the limited room that you have there in the first place, but the partners that you have there, imports and Case Holland and the other groups that are there, you know, I know them very well, and I just appreciate that ongoing commitment that you have working with the contractors and our union and non-union workers that are down there. I know a couple of things that have happened recently about Hart Middle Island, for instance, and where we are right now. And I know the opening other part of that island is important, that we want to open the whole island itself. And I don't know how we can continue to work on that. We are working first with some DNR rangers to get back out there, because we don't have anybody at the time. So that's with DNRs, and it's another time that I have an opportunity to talk with them. But I like to have the opportunity maybe to sit down and talk with you and find out how we can get that done, because I know the Port of Baltimore has been very responsible, and you have done a lot to make sure that Hart Middle Island is part of the success. And I appreciate that, but let's find the opportunity to talk to see where we can go from there. I really appreciate that. Another good thing, I'm sorry.
You know, absolutely. Thank you. Again, it's been absolutely critical to us. And as you take a look at Hart Middle Island into the future, what it means for available capacity, it's all about the availability of capacity within our dredge material confinement facilities. And the more capacity we have, wherever that may be, ultimately it keeps the cost per cubic yard down. And we're able to get a more cost-effective program out there for the trade points of the world and anybody else that's using access, gaining access to that confined disposal operation.
And I know I'm happy to see that we're ahead of schedule for the Howard Tunnel.
Yes.
That is going to be a great success for you and for our other partners, such as Trade Point. So that's going to be a great success. I'm really looking forward to that ribbon cutting and moving forward with that.
Yes, sir.
I think other than those two things, I think a priority that I knew that if there's one thing that I can definitely say that what the good Senator Rosenthal was, I've met with some of our partners down at the port and the infrastructure. Parts of the areas where they really they're in disrepair. They really need some repair, because if we don't do some of the repairs there, they might have to close some of the areas. And that's one of the problems that we have, Madam Chair. They have limited resources of areas where they can bring the ships in. And there's some of those areas that really need some major repairs. And I think maybe we can have an opportunity to talk about maybe some of those issues. Because if we lose some of our areas in the port, where are we going to dock some of our ships? I think we're going to be in a bad place. So I appreciate Senator Roosevelt talking about that, all right? But you bringing that up, I think it's something that we need to continue to talk about.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a question. In terms of the dredge material, you, I know, had talked about Poplar Island and had talked about two other, Barron and
James Islands.
James Island.
Yes.
Can you talk about a little bit about kind of the capacity to take the dredge material and
Sure.
its quality?
It is. We are very fortunate. The Dredge Material Management Program, the DMAP program that is statutorily established from the legislative body, gives us a very unique opportunity to be able to utilize the dredge material for beneficial use as well as downstream innovative reuse. So again, the quality of that material really gives us a very unique advantage. For the past several years, we've been utilizing Poplar Island to be able to rebuild, as I had mentioned, more than 1,700 acres that was redeveloped by the use of our dredge material coming out of our channels. Unfortunately, we are coming to the end of the available capacity, and hence through the DMMP process and the identification of James and Barron Islands. If you look down there before any work was done, essentially you're looking at maybe, depending on the tide, a little bit of land showing. We're talking about square feet. We're talking about maybe a tree or two that was down in that area. We have the opportunity to be able to develop during the next 30 to 40 year period more than 2,000 acres of reclaimed islands. Again, providing for wildlife redevelopment and providing us the opportunity to have access to a significant amount of dredge area to be able to put this amount of material. Again, you know, to tell you how critical this is, if we do not dredge for a period of 3 to 5 years, we will go from a 50-foot channel to a 45-foot channel. That would relegate us to really a tier 2 port. We have to maintain the funding necessary to be able to continue enhancing these projects and allowing us the opportunity not only to meet the needs of bringing this material in and having placement options for it, but also the redevelopment of the wildlife, the birding trails, and everything that allows us the opportunity to provide back to the environment through the utilization of this beneficial material. So again, it is a program that is well charted, probably is the model program for ports throughout the United States for the utilization of dredge material. Rather than taking it out and putting it in the landfills, capping it, and using it in a situation where it's taken out of our environment, we have the opportunity to be able to keep this in our environment and use it for ecologically sound purposes to be able to rebuild the island resources that through a period of erosion in time has been taken away from us.
Thank you. I just want to, but you're not using all of the material for these island reclamation projects, right? You do have on land.
We do have confined disposal facilities at Cox Creek and Masonville.
Yep.
And then continue our work on the development of what we call our STAR facility, which is adjacent to Cox Creek. And that will allow us the opportunity to utilize that material for innovative reuse. And that's working with the private sector where it comes out. It's dried, it goes through its natural process, and then it's used by the private sector in use for everything from pavers to bricks and other material that can be utilized in construction and innovatively reused as a resource. And there's a cost associated with that. So we get the opportunity to be able to see some investments made by these businesses back into the state by compensation associated with utilizing that material.
How extensive is that program?
Right now, we're at the beginning stage of that. We're going through the request for information process and working with a lot of those businesses that are expressing interest in being able to develop there. There will be a scoring process that we will go through. So we are right at the beginning, but it is one that does provide us the opportunity by utilizing that material rather than putting it into the confined disposal facilities. We get the opportunity to use it in innovative reuse, which gives us more capacity within our dredge confinement disposal facilities. We're not putting material into those facilities, rather we're using it for some type of productive means.
Great. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much for being with us.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And that will conclude the hearing today. Thank you.